Hey there, welcome to Module 9. In this course, we will cover telephony and trunk management. In this module, we will review topology and certificate authorities and walk through trunks and sites. We will also learn about edges and edge groups. A pretty standard responsibility for administrators is phone management. We will walk through creation and management of numbers and extensions and go through metrics. If you are keeping track, this module will cover the telephony section. Let's get started. Under Telephony, click on Topology. The Topology map displays details about the telephony network configuration of your Genesys cloud organization. The Topology map allows you to perform various operations. See your entire Genesys cloud telephony network, including sites, phones, edges, and trunks. Get more detailed information by clicking the icons to drill down to sites, edges, and other telephony objects. Display phone edge assignments. Track down problems, such as offline and out-of-service edges. If you want to quickly investigate a particular site or an edge, you can use the Find box. You can add phone edge assignment details to the topology map. When you do, you see arrows that show connections between primary and secondary sites. Click Overlays, then select the Show Phone Edge Assignments. In short, topology gives you a bird's eye view of your current configuration and allows you to quickly troubleshoot issues. Moving on to certificate authorities. Digital certificates ensure the identification of a trusted authority through encryption. Genesys Cloud supports two types of digital certificates, managed and remote. There is only one managed digital certificate for your Genesys Cloud organization, and it is set up and managed by Genesys. Genesys Cloud uses this managed certificate authority to create trusted TLS connections for components such as the edge and managed phones. This managed certificate authority also allows remote SIP devices to trust and accept secure connections to external trunks connected to the edge. You can add remote certificate authorities in Genesys Cloud by importing the digital certificate files issued to your organization. These remote digital certificates allow the edge to trust a remote TLS endpoint. To add, click Create New. Select the appropriate option. Either upload the CRT file or paste the contents of your certificate file. In the Select Service for Use box, type or select the appropriate services from the list and click Save Certificate Authority. Up next, let's take a look at trunks. A trunk is a telecommunications circuit from a carrier to a Genesys cloud telephony connection. There are two types of trunks, external trunks and phone trunks. Let's get started by configuring an external trunk under BYOC Cloud. Click on Trunks under the Telephony section. Press Create New in the External Trunks tab. The External Trunks page has two sections. The upper section contains the base settings needed for an external trunk. The lower section, under the External Trunk Configuration heading, contains other settings that you can use to refine your external trunk configuration. The page categorizes these other settings under expandable sections. Genesys Cloud recommends that you rely on the base BYOC Cloud trunk settings described in this article. However, if your carrier has other requirements, you can use the additional settings in the External Trunk Configuration section to refine your external trunk configuration. There are two types of BYOC trunks that you can select depending on how your telephony system is set up. Each trunk type also has a subtype that is designed to narrow down the settings that are required for that type of trunk. The two types are BYOC PBX trunk type and BYOC carrier trunk type. One is a generic subtype that you can use for most carrier configurations. The other is a Verizon-specific subtype that you use if Verizon is your carrier. In External Trunk Name, enter a trunk name. From the type lists, select the type and subtype for the BYOC Cloud trunk you want to create. In this exercise, we are going to create a BYOC carrier with generic BYOC carrier. Set trunk state to in service. Select the appropriate trunk transport protocol from the protocol list. Enter an identifier in the Inbound SIP Termination Identifier box. The Inbound SIP Termination Identifier is a static configuration that should be populated with a regionally unique identifier. This identifier will be used to direct traffic from external carriers to the organization. Enter a header in the Inbound SIP Termination Header box. If you cannot use either the FQDN or the TGRP format for the Inbound SIP Termination Identifier, enable DNIS replacement routing. Under Outbound, enter the appropriate identifiers in the Outbound SSIP Termination, Outbound SIP TGRP attribute, and Outbound SIP DNIS boxes to configure your outbound request URI. To specify any SIP servers or proxies, enter a value in the hostname or IP address box, a port number in the port box, and click plus. Choose the appropriate digest authentication setting. If you enable digest authentication, you need to specify the associated realm and the username and password to use as the authentication credentials. Under calling, specify the caller ID and caller name for the trunk, and then use the prioritized caller selection to specify the location from which and order in which you want to display caller ID information to the call recipient. Under SIP access control, you can build a list of IP or SITR addresses to which you want to permit SIP access. To do so, enter an address and click plus, then save external trunk. Moving from trunks to sites, we are going to create a site and tie it to the location we created in an earlier module. A site is an entity in Genesys Cloud that you use to establish a set of rules for routing calls. These rules consist of settings that specify number plans and outbound routes. Click Create New. Type a name into the site name box. From the location list, select the location we created earlier. Not all locations can be used for sites. Locations do not appear unless you configure the location as available for sites. From the time zone list, select your time zone. Under Media Model, select Cloud. Click Create Site. After you click Create Site, the Edit Site page appears. You'll see that it contains 4 tabs titled General, Number Plans, Outbound Routes, and Simulate Call. You'll continue the initial site configuration on the General tab. For details on the settings and features on the other tabs, see the Related Tasks section of this article. At the top of the General tab, enter a description. Choose Media Regions and specify a relay turn behavior. If you are using WebRTC, you need to select a set of media regions and specify a relay turn behavior. Configure outbound calling. In the caller ID box, enter the telephone number that you want to appear in the caller ID information for outbound calls. Enter this number in E164 format, which includes the plus sign and the country code. In the caller name box, enter the name that you want to appear in the caller ID information for outbound calls. Save site. Under the Number Plans tab, click New Number Plan and enter a name in the Number Plan name box. Under Match Type, select one of the available match types from the match type list. Depending on what match type you select, enter the required information. We are selecting digit length in this hands-on. Enter a number or a range of numbers and number of digits. Select the correct classification or enter a new classification in the classification list. We entered 5. Click Save Number Plans. Let's create an outbound route now. Click on the Outbound Routes tab. Click New Outbound Route. Enter an outbound route name and a description. From the Classifications list, select a classification. From the Select an External Trunk list, select the appropriate trunks. If you select more than one external trunk, you can specify a distribution pattern to define how outgoing calls are routed to available trunks. Select Sequential to route outgoing calls to each trunk in succession, beginning with the first trunk. Select Random to route outgoing calls to a randomly selected trunk. Click Save Outbound Routes when done. Genesys Cloud provides a tool for telephony admins to test that a site is correctly configured to dial numbers and SSIP addresses. Simulate Call checks the Genesys Cloud settings for number normalization, number plan, classification, outbound route, external trunk settings, in-service edges, and destination sites. Click on the Simulate Call tab. Enter a destination number or SIP address in the phone number or address field, and press the return key on your physical keyboard. Click Simulate Call. As you can see, sites, locations, and trunks all work together to route calls in and to the correct spot. Adding call routes then routes those calls to the proper call flow. Next, we are going to take a look at how edges and edge groups integrate with this process. Setting up edges requires several steps outside of Genesys Cloud, with several different types of configurations possible. Because of this, we cannot provide an accurate step-by-step for every scenario. We will go through creating an edge in Genesys Cloud and will provide a typical step-by-step guide. Under Telephony, click Edges. Click Provision New Edge. On the Provision New Edge screen, enter a name in the Edge name box. If BYOC Premises, Customer Hardware Solution, enter the HPE serial number found on your server chassis in the serial number and confirm serial number. If BYOC Premises, Customer VM Solution, click Provision Edge. Keep in mind on May 3rd, 2023 Genesys announced the deprecation of the customer VM solution. On the Enter the device pin and region into the installer screen, take note of the values in the device pin and region fields as you need them later. Moving on to an edge group. A BYOC premises edge group is an association of premises-based edges that enable a collection of network devices to communicate on a low-latency LAN or WAN when required. The purpose of an edge group is to allow all edges in the group to access and share trunks connected to other edges in the edge group. Let's create one. Under Telephony, click Edge Groups. Click Create New. The Create Edge Group page appears. In the Edge Group name box, enter a name. In the description box, enter a description. Under Phone Trunks, click Select Phone Trunk and select your WebRTC or SIP phone trunk. Under Address Family, choose between IP4 or IP6. All internal edge communication will use this address family. Be sure all edges have this family enabled on their edge communication interface. Click Save Edge Group. Now, let's stay along the same path and dig into phone management. Phone configuration consists of two steps. First, you create a base settings configuration. Then, you create a phone and assign it a base settings configuration. We are going to configure three base settings: Polycom VVX601, WebRTC, and Remote. Under Telephony, click Phone Management, then click on Base Setting and click Add. Type a name in the base settings name box. From the phone make and model list, select Genesys Cloud WebRTC Phone. You can choose to use default base settings or edit base settings. Typically, base settings do not get modified unless there is something specific with your network. We will cover it from a general aspect. Under General, when the persistent connection setting is disabled, Genesys Cloud must create a connection for every call. When you enable the persistent connection setting and configure a timeout value, you improve Genesys Cloud's ability to process subsequent calls. More specifically, calls that come in while the connection is still active are immediately alerted via the UI, or if the auto-answer setting is configured for the user, are auto-answered. Set the amount of time in seconds that the open connection remains idle before it automatically closes. Under Media, the Turn Behavior feature reduces the number of open outbound ports on your firewall. When you use the Turn Behavior feature, an automatically scaling fleet of Turn service instances takes over and routes your outbound connections through a limited pool of reserved addresses. From the DSCP list, choose the differentiated services code point value of quality of service for RTP packets. Choose which codec you want. Under Network, from the list, choose the value of quality of service for SIP packets. The system places this value in the upper 6 bits of the type of service field. The TOS field is in the IP header of every SIP packet. Under Custom, this option allows Genesys Cloud customer care personnel to alter phone configuration for troubleshooting or special circumstances. Now, let's create a WebRTC phone. Under the Phones tab in Phone Management, click Add. In the Phone Name box, type a name. From the Base Settings list, select the base setting configuration that you created for your Genesys Cloud WebRTC phone. From the Site list, select your site. From the Person list, select the name of the person to whom you want to assign this Genesys Cloud WebRTC phone. This should be familiar since we built the base settings with these phone settings. You can either click Save Phone or continue customizing. Let's create a remote phone now. Under Telephony, click Phone Management, then click on Base Setting and click Add. Type a name in the Base Settings name box. From the Phone Make and Model drop-down list, select Remote. You can choose to use default base settings or edit base settings. Typically, base settings do not get modified unless there is something specific with your network. We covered these in the WebRTC phone creation. We will cover new items that are added to these sections based on what we are building. Under Incoming Caller Address, using the Trunk's prioritized caller ID selection rules. If the Use the Original Caller Address is selected, the edge passes the caller's info as the ANI when calling the remote station leg. Click Save Base Settings when finished. Now that we have created the base settings for remote, let's create a phone. Under the Phones tab in Phone Management, click Add. In the Phone Name box, type a name. From the Base Settings list, select the base setting configuration that you created for your remote phone. From the Site list, select your site. In the Remote Address field, type in the remote number of the user who this will be assigned to. This should be familiar since we built the base settings with these phone settings. You can either click Save Phone or continue customizing. Let's create a physical phone now. Under Telephony, click Phone Management, then click on Base Setting and click Add. Type a name in the Base Settings name box. From the Phone Make and Model drop-down list, select Polycom VVX601. Leave standalone features set to off unless you are creating a base settings configuration for conference room phones. You can choose to use default base settings or edit base settings. Typically, base settings do not get modified unless there is something specific with your network. We covered these in the WebRTC phone creation. We will cover new items that are added to these sections based on what we are building. Also, configure settings on the Base Line Appearance tab. Type a name in the key label box. If you want this appearance to be available on the other keys, select the Span Appearance to Remaining Keys checkbox. To use the default base phone settings, click Save Base Settings. Now that we have created the base settings for the Polycom VVX601, let's create a phone. Under the Phones tab in Phone Management, click Add. In the Phone Name box, type a name. From the Base Settings list, select the base setting configuration that you created for your Polycom VVX601 phone. From the Site list, select your site. This should be familiar since we built the base settings with these phone settings. You can either click Save Phone or continue customizing. After walking through creating the different types of phones, we have now walked through creating the phones and base settings that tie the user to the site, which now will allow the interaction to get to the phone so that the user can answer. The next thing we will take a look at are numbers and extensions. Under Telephony, click DID Numbers. Click the DID Assignments tab. Select a checkbox next to the DID number that you want to assign. Click Assign to access the Assign a DID Number panel. Select one of the following items from the Assignee Type list and fill in associated information. If person, select Person from the Assignee Type list. Select a User from the Assignee list. Then select the appropriate type from the Saved Number as list. If Call Flow, select Call Flow from the Assignee Type list. Select a call flow from the assignee list. If Phone, select Phone from the Assignee Type list. Select a phone from the assignee list. Select a line key name from the Saved Number to box. Click Save. To unassign a number, access the DID Assignments tab. Select a checkbox next to the DID number that you want to unassign. Click Unassign. Click Unassign to confirm. To choose the columns, click Select Columns. Select the checkbox next to columns you want to appear. Clear the checkbox next to the columns you want to remove from table. To change the view, from the View list, choose either All, Assigned or Unassigned. To add DIDs and toll-free number ranges, click on the DID Ranges tab. DID ranges make the purchase numbers available in your organization. This feature allows you to set up, edit, and delete DID and toll-free numbers. The main display consists of a table that allows you to view all of your numbers. To help you organize your numbers, you can adjust the view by choosing which columns appear in the table. Click Create Range to access the Create Range panel. In the DID Start box, select the country and then type the first number in the range. In the DID End box, select the same country and then type the last number in the range. Type the name of carrier in the Service Provider box. Type any appropriate notes in the Comments box. Click Save. Adding extension and extension pools are just as easy. Let's do that next. Before you assign an extension number to a user, you must first add the number to an extension pool. You can add a single extension or a range of extension numbers and assign them to a division within your organization. Let's get started by adding a single extension. Under Telephony, click Extensions. Click the Extension Pools tab. Click Add. In the Extension Start field, type the extension number that you want to add to the organization. Leave the Extension End field unchanged. From the Division list, select a division. Click Create. The extension number is now available for assignment to a user. To add a range, click Add. In the Extension Start field, type the first sequential extension number for the range that you want to assign to the organization. In the Extension End field, type the last sequential extension number for the range that you want to assign to the organization. From the Division list, select a division. Click Create. To recap, This module is designed to give you a better understanding on why telephony and trunk management is important, as well as walk you through setting up the pieces needed to successfully receive and route calls within Genesys Cloud. We have several hands-on exercises for you to download and complete. Thank you for completing Module 9. In Module 10, we will discuss message management. See you there.